When it comes to taking photographs of food for marketing purposes, what's the difference between a shot like this versus a shot like this? Your goal as a food photographer is to make absolutely anything look totally divine, delicious, succulent, and just to make everyone lust after it. Food photography is such a specialist form of photography that it's probably even more demanding than taking photos of fashion models, because the amount of planning that goes into the lighting, the composition of all of the shots, figuring out what colours to really enhance in the food, the amount of planning and effort that goes into post-production as well. It's so specialist, and a lot of food photographers can make a lot of money just focusing on photographing food. A lot of marketing agencies who work a lot with food producers and restaurants have actually got a string of specialist food photographers on their books, and that's all those particular types of photographers do. Check out a link below in the description to how McDonald's takes photographs of their food, and also the amount of effort that they go to in lighting, composition, actually preparing the food specifically for the photo shoot. That's another really specialist activity, and also the post-production as well. Now, I've never tried food photography in my life, and I'm actually a really bad cook, and I don't really know how to rate myself as a photographer. So today I want to try and learn a little bit about taking photos of food, and I'm going to try and also cook this piece of beef which I picked up from my local supermarket. And we're going to try and take some amazing photographs of it that are worthy of the greats in food photography. I emphasize we're going to try. We've got our beef, we've got my usual suburban kitchen. I'm going to take all of these photos on a tripod, because that'll let me go for some very long exposures if I have to, because I want to keep the ISO down as low as I can so that I can maximize the detail and minimize any noise in my pictures. The camera I'm going to be using is the Leica MP240 with the 35mm F2.0 Summicron, one of the sharpest lenses around, and I'm also going to be bringing in some external speed lights as well. For a few other shots, we're going to be using the Fuji X-H1 with the 16 to 55 f2.8 lens. We're also going to be using that for some video of preparing and cutting up the food as well. First off, we have to preheat the oven to 200 degrees Celsius. So let's do that. We have to remove the beef from the packaging and place on a preheated oven shelf. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Cook for 35 minutes per 500 grams or until cooked through. So at 862 grams, that works out to be 61 minutes. I'm actually lighting these shots just with natural and available light at this stage. I've got all of the light coming in, specifically just from one window on one side. Now I'm going to use one plate for cutting and another plate for presentation. Okay, let's punch in some of the settings that we're going to be using. So we're going to F2 and we are on a 35mm lens at 200 ISO. And it's important in setting the Leica speed light, just set that to forward, just set the speed light to forward facing, go back into set mode, and just tell it your focusing distance, because then it knows how much power to use. And you can still bounce off the ceiling if you want. So right now I'm actually down to 1.5 meters, which is as close as the speed light will actually let me have habit, so that will create a little bit of a problem if I want to light straight on. That's not going to be so much of an issue because I'll be bouncing off of the ceiling, but I tend to use that as a guide for how much power I should be putting into this flash anyway. I might also attach my remote cord and play around with the light coming from different angles for when I want to use the speed light. For now I'm just going to turn it off because I'm probably going to take a lot of photos of natural light. So just setting up, taking a couple of test shots before the meat comes out the oven. Whoa. Ow! Let's lay out a couple of props. I'm actually overexposing some of these intentionally to really bring out the detail in the shadows. For those of you who are into video, you'll notice I'm actually making sure that I'm positioning myself so as not to cast a shadow on the meat. So now let's just do some cutting. I guess this is where you'd also want to make sure that the meat that you were using would respond to cutting really well. I mean, this is just like Cole's home brand. I don't know how it cuts compared to some other types of beef. Oh, there's the string. Doesn't that just look divine? And we're really capturing the steam coming off of that as well. Now, my skills in laying out the food here isn't great. I have tried to go for these wedge style cuts of beef because I think that's what they try and do for restaurants. I've really stuffed up cooking the wedges. They're a bit wet and sloppy, but in post I'm going to really try and push the saturation just to look at the balance between the different colors here.